Ukraine says its capital has suffered, quotes, horrific rocket strikes overnight. Russian troops are moving closer to Kiev on the second full day of this attack. It has been a night of unrest for thousands of Ukrainians as missiles struck the city. Residential buildings on the outskirts were hit, and firefighters are still putting out the flames, we understand. The Ukrainian army says Russia fired on civilian areas, but its air defense systems have repelled attacks. Ukrainians in the capital waking up to that sound, the sound of sirens this morning. Their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is warning of what he calls enemy sabotage groups already in Kiev. In an early morning address, Zelensky said he's a target, but dismissed rumours that he has fled the capital.
There's information that enemy sabotage groups have entered Kiev, so I ask the people of Kiev, be careful, respect the curfew rules. I am staying in the government quarter together with all those who are needed for the central government to work. According to the information we have, the enemy has designated me as target number 1. My family is target number 2. They want to destroy Ukraine politically by destroying the head of state.
Just after 7 hours GMT, that's 9 a.m. local time in Kiev. Andrew Simmons is our correspondent there. Andrew, just take us through what's been going on overnight there.
Horrific, horrendous, all adjectives that are accurate in what's been happening here overnight. A litany of airstrikes. There was also one success for the Ukrainian defence in that they shot down one of the fighter jets, fighter bomber, should I say, and that unfortunately crashed down into a civilian area. Unknown number of casualties, but at least one dead. There has, I'm sad to report, been a large number of air raids since dawn. We've had on 3 occasions the air raid sirens going off, and a civilian area was struck by one of those air raids. We're assured. Sadly, we don't know the level of impact in terms of civilian loss. We're also hearing now, and this is very new, an unconfirmed report that Ukraine has fired ballistic missiles at Milovo airport. That's a military airfield near Rostov in Russia proper. That's over the border. So this is escalating in every respect, not just in the air, but on the ground as well. Armoured columns all heading towards the city. The latest report is about 30 kilometres away, with one column coming down southwards to this city. There has been some successes on the ground by the Ukrainians. They've repelled, they've counterattacked at Hostomel, which is an airfield about 15 kilometres away from the capital. That airfield had been attacked on Thursday by helicopter gunships, Russian helicopter gunships, really causing a lot of damage, not to the runway, but taking out the whole airfield to allow, reportedly, paratroopers to land in large troop-carrying aircraft. But that has not come to fruition. That, though we understand that whatever happened, those paratroopers didn't arrive. But what did happen was that the Ukrainians launched a counterattack and took the airfield back. That's the latest there. And in terms of these armoured columns, the Ukrainians seem to be having some success with their new weaponry, their missile launchers, and they apparently did repel one attack which was coming down from the Belarus border. They'd something like 40, 50 kilometers away from that border. They came up against very fierce resistance. And what we're also hearing is that Ukrainian special forces are blowing up bridges in key points. They're not giving the details of all of them for obvious reasons, but they are attacking bridges. They're blowing them up in order to actually bring the advancing ground forces to a halt. halt, but it's an overwhelming, in the words of the press office for the military, they're using the word overwhelming force being used by the enemy. So this is colossal. It's scenes that haven't been witnessed since the Second World War, and now, sadly, we're getting civilians involved. This is a look back at the past 24 hours. The Russian invasion was launched with terrifying speed and against a wide range of targets right across the country. The long military build-up around Ukraine's borders finally unleashed by order of the Kremlin. Helicopter gunships, fighter jets, missiles, tanks, convoys of armoured vehicles are all involved in what Russia calls a military operation. For the moment, the targets appear to be specific and strategic. They include Ukraine's airfields and military bases. This video from Mariupol in southern Ukraine appears to show the destruction of the city's airfield. But shrapnel and shells are also reported to have landed in civilian areas, including the capital, Kiev.
Until the very last moment, I didn't believe it would happen. I thought it might just involve Donetsk and Luhansk, but I didn't ever think it would involve Kiev.
Most likely war has now begun. Everyone is leaving. Everywhere is shut.
I hate the country that started this war. I speak as a mother and as a Ukrainian, and I call on the whole world to help us and stop this aggressor.
Ukraine's government declared martial law.
I had a conversation with US President Joe Biden. The US is starting to gather international support. Today we need you, each of you, to be calm. If possible, stay at home, please. We are working. The army is working. The entire security and defense sector of Ukraine is working.
The Russian military offensive follows a carefully choreographed strategy of Russia's President Vladimir Putin. He unilaterally recognized two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine as independent of Kiev, and then sent Russian soldiers in under the pretext of being peacekeepers. The battle for Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine has been going on since 2014, with more than 14,000 people killed in fighting between the Russian-backed separatists and the Ukrainian army. Now what Putin calls peacekeepers are on the attack, and the Russian leader is warning Ukrainian soldiers not to resist.
Whoever would try to stop us and further create threats to our country, to our people, should know that Russia's response will be immediate and lead you to such consequences that you have never faced in your history. We are ready for any outcome.
The Russian invasion began despite last-ditch appeals from members of the United Nations Security Council to ease tension. Ukraine's ambassador to the UN demanded his Russian counterpart step down as chairman.
Call Putin, call Lavrov to stop aggression. There is no purgatory for war criminals. They go straight to hell, Ambassador.
As news of the invasion spread in Ukraine's capital, Kiev, main highways out of the city quickly became gridlocked with traffic. There's a mood of desperation developing now. Many people just jumping into their cars, getting their families together and heading on the road, trying to get to Poland. But the main auto routes are all jammed. There are so many people trying to do the same thing. Others are going underground, taking shelter. Others have been flocking to the supermarkets and frantically stocking up on essential items. This was the scene in Kramatorsk in the east of Ukraine as shoppers grabbed what they could to fill their cupboards. The Ukrainian army and air force are putting up a fight and resisting the Russian attack. This video from the Defense Ministry said to show a Russian helicopter shot down by Ukrainian forces near Kiev. But there will be no reinforcements from NATO, and the odds look heavily stacked against Ukraine's forces.
So, Andrew, day two of this invasion, how's the civilian population bearing up under what must be incredible pressure?
Yes, that is the right term, Peter. It's just horrendous for them. Many, thousands, we think, managed to get away. They took an immediate decision before dawn, the beginning of the airstrikes and the ground force invasion. They got away and they got into Poland, and we've been seeing pictures of them all crossing the border and going through the process with their visas, but the majority of them they were dazed and confused in some places, but they had to take shelter. And right now, this Friday, well, it's horrendous for them. They're all basically getting into positions where they can get safe when the air raid sirens go off. But the air raid sirens sometimes don't give a lot of warning. I mean, that's the nature of war, and you don't have time to get into a place of safety. There are 4 main metro stations where people are basically living now. There's real anger in the air. People are really furious. The hatred for Vladimir Putin is palpable. And furthermore, there are a number of places in the city where you can get any gun of your choice, particularly an AK-47, to defend yourself. And that is the policy of the presidency. Volodymyr Zelensky is of a mood where he wants everyone to fight. He's stepped up the mobilization. It's reported that no males of fighting ages are allowed to get out now. He wants everyone hunkered down and trying to avoid the air raids. Anyone fit enough should be fighting, because that's what they're ready for. Every place of shelter is awash with rumors and also hatred for Vladimir Putin, as I was saying. And what we're going to find is, when these forces, and I say when, it's not if really, it does look like when the Russian forces reach the capital, there is likely to be fierce resistance. We're getting warnings also that there are undercover Russian agents heavily armed in the city. The presidency say that is the case. Be careful, watch out if you're out on the streets. It's utterly, well, there's a few cars driving around, and they're invariably driving around at high speed, responding to various reports of activity. But as I say, we can't show you pictures, we can't get there right now, but the hospitals are struggling with the level of casualties right now. And also to bring you up to date with what Volodymyr Zelensky has been saying. His latest figure this morning was 137 dead, and of those, 10 officers. We're talking about losses in the field. We're talking about losses of soldiers who will all posthumously be given medals of honor. However, the civilian numbers of casualties is not clear. I think you could almost say, from what we're hearing, that figure has gone up quite considerably, and possibly nearer 200 when you're hearing about all the reports we're getting of these attacks. But the overall mood, to answer the question in a sentence, is one of an absolutely horrendous fear of what's going to happen next.
Andrew, thank you very much. Stay close. Andrew Simmons, our correspondent there, live for us in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Well, here's a snapshot of what's happening on the ground. As far as we can tell you, Russian forces have attacked areas across Ukraine. Multiple cities are under fire. This is the approximate location of those strikes. Russian troops have moved in by land, air and sea, to the east from Russia, south from Crimea, and north from the Belarusian side. There have also been naval attacks from the Sea of Azov. Hoda Abdelhamid joins us live now from Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine. Hoda, what's the latest that's been going on the ground there overnight?
Well, actually, as that lady in the report from Andrews just said, everyone was expecting that the big push, the beginning of this war, would have started here in the east with all these more than 100,000 Russian troops just across the border. Well, none of that happened. Yes, there is sporadic shelling along the front line between the Ukrainian army and the separatists. The separatists have tried a push in Lugansk region, sort of northeast from where I'm standing. They managed to go across in a point called Chestia, but then the Ukrainian took that back. So there hasn't been any major movement along that line. We are hearing now that in the south, in the vicinity of Mariupol. Obviously there has been much more activity for the last 24 hours. There has been a lot of attacks, the Russians trying to put a lot of pressure on the Ukrainians in that area, and we are hearing that they might be advancing towards Berdyansk, which is a city just on the coast along the Azov Sea, but we still don't, it's still not confirmed how far they have been. But what is clear is that at the moment, from what we have seen unfolding in the last 24 to 36 hours, is that Russia, by attacking Kiev, by attacking Kharkiv, is trying to put pressure there to then have the Ukrainian army units that are posted here in the east that are supposed to be, are reputed to be the strongest and the better equipped to capitulate. At the moment, they are standing strong and there is no major push because the separatists can't do it alone. If they were to push, they need the Russians with them to be able to push, because at the end of the day, the Ukrainian army is a regular army, it's strong, it's been there for the last 8 years, it's well entrenched and it's well equipped.
I'm just wondering if we can pull up the map, Hodder, so we can show the viewers exactly where you are, because Kramatorsk is kind of directly due north of Mariupol, down there, which is towards Crimea. So it's in that corridor area from eastern Ukraine. And where you are, Hodder, is one of those areas, one of those towns that's kind of exposed in a way, because it's kind of isolated. It's not close to Kiev. It's close to western central Russia. So that must be an awareness that the people have there. What are they saying, the people of the city? Because we had 4 months of a build-up of Russian military, but when it came to it this time yesterday, it still clearly came as a surprise.
It did come up as a surprise, and just for our viewers to understand, Kramatorsk is a major commercial hub in this area. It's one of the main cities, and it's only a 10-minute drive from Slavyansk. Back in 2014 and 15, well, the separatists had pushed all the way to Slavyansk. That's one of the first moves they had done. It's a symbolic city for them, and they had taken over the city council there. They have surrounded it with rubber tires, and that's where you also had their Russian advisors based. So many people expected that that would be a push from the separatists this side. Now, you have pro-Russian people here and all over the regions of Donetsk and Lugansk. In some places it's 50-50, in some places you have a majority of pro-Russian opinions. Very interesting, I was talking this morning to a young man who is from Kramatorsk, who is pro-Russian, whose friends are pro-Russian. Well, he said, I would like to have better relations with Moscow. I would like that Ukraine and Russia be on much better terms. He's not necessarily for the separatists, because there is a sort of memory there of when the separatists were ruling in this city and in this area, and they are not good memories. But he said, with all what's unfolding in Kiev, well, he doesn't agree with that anymore. He said to me that his friends don't agree with that anymore, that Russia has gone way too far. And that is what I think Vladimir Putin is up against, because he's keeping this part of the country, the one where he has the most support, at peace at the moment. Yes, there has been sporadic bombings. Yes, he has targeted some bases and some military units, especially away from the front line here in Kramatorsk at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yesterday, when it started in Kiev, there were loud explosions. But if this continues, well, people here are going to be alienated, because the pictures are circulating everywhere. What is unfolding in Kiev is shocking people here, and I think Vladimir Putin would lose a lot of support as long as what's unfolding in Kiev, in Lviv, and in other places continues to happen. Now, are they expecting a war here? Are they expecting the push to happen here? Yes, because the end game is obviously to take the entire Donetsk and Lugansk region, because that's what the separatists want, that's what they have written in the constitution, and that's what they see as their historic land. So it is a very interesting situation. Vladimir Putin saying that he is protecting the ethnic Russians in this part of the country, he is protecting the Russian speakers in this part of the country, where he is alienating some of them at the moment, and I think with more with the hours to pass and more, fighting going across and what's unfolding in Kiev, he might lose that support.
Hoda, thank you very much. Hoda Abdelhamid there talking to us live from Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine. Charles Stratford, south of there, is just outside Mariupol. On Thursday, he did see a convoy of tanks, some of them flying Ukrainian flags.
I'm close to a checkpoint on the outskirts of Mariupol. Military vehicles behind me, heading down a road heading west. I don't know whether you can see quite yet on the other side of the road. There is a convoy of tanks appearing. In the last 10-15 minutes or so, we've heard the distinctive thud of what sound to be Grad missiles being used. These are these missiles that are... Just leave you that so you can see the tanks coming out, heading into Mariupol. But as I say, in the last few minutes, we've heard the distinctive sound of Grad missiles being used in the not too far distance. Now, across the field here, there are Ukrainian military installations that we understand were hit earlier, billowing smoke coming from them. Another couple of tanks. Interestingly, that tank being towed suggests it may well have been hit. But yeah, also increasingly we're seeing more and more people leaving from this checkpoint. This checkpoint, the road going down towards the west, towards cities like Verdansk on the Azov Sea, as well as Dnipro in the northwest. And interestingly, we have been speaking to a source in the Navy in around Verdansk who says that earlier today, naval forces off the coast of the Azov Sea, off the coast of Verdansk, came under fire from Russian naval vessels, forcing them back to base.
Charles Stratford there near Mariupol. Let's bring in Fabrice Potier. He's a Chief Strategy Officer at the political consultants Rasmussen Global. He's also formerly a Director of Policy Planning at NATO. He's joining us from Santander in Spain. Fabrice Potier, Ben Wallace, the UK Defence Secretary, just saying on domestic British television that the Russian forces have not achieved yet what they wanted to achieve on day one. But he's also saying, in his opinion, Russia wants to take all of Ukraine. Is he right?
Well, he probably has more intelligence than me, but it looks like indeed Putin decided to go clearly for Kiev. So it's a beheading strategy that we are watching here. And yes, the Russian forces have not probably made as quickly progress as they expected. But if you look at the numbers, if you look at the equipment and the will, I think it's pretty obvious that the Russian forces will prevail at some point. Also, given the kind of technology and military gear that the Russian forces have, like jamming and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The Ukrainian army is obviously much stronger than it was 8 years ago, better trained, better equipped, but it's still kind of an asymmetric fight here. So I have to say that, yes, it looks like if it's the whole of Ukraine, and especially for Kiev. And then I think what Putin wants to do is to impose the terms. He wants probably to have a regime that is seen as sympathetic to his twisted vision of this greater Russia. And he probably wants to consolidate some kind of territory with some land bridge going from the eastern Donbass all the way to Odessa. So I think this is what we are watching now. And the sad truth is the West is just standing by and watching, because sanctions are important, unity talk are important, but now we're in a sequence of military confrontation. And against that, you can only respond by force, and we are not at all managing this escalation. Putin has the hand on the escalation and is keeping the strategic advantage.
If day one, the first 24 hours, has not gone in the desired direction as far as the Russians are concerned, do they now have to start rethinking their strategy? Because we have to engage with the growing reality, don't we, which is there was a perception that the front line was where eastern Ukraine meets south central Russia. But there are other front lines up north in Ukraine where it abuts Belarus. There is a front line there, and also coming from the south, from the sea, in and around about Crimea.
It seems, but again, I'm not a tactical specialist and I don't have as much intelligence as government officials, but it seems that the Russian forces are trying to encircle the strongest and best Ukrainian forces that are deployed on the so-called contact line in order to basically put them in front of a dilemma of you fight to death or you just have to give up. So it seems that they're trying to encircle and avoid the core of the Ukrainian forces and going for Kiev as quickly as possible in order to have basically a political capitulation. I think this is really what we're watching now.
When you use the word capitulation there, Fabrice, is that what Mr. Putin wants to go for? Would he back off if he got capitulation, surrender? Let's come up with another word that means the same thing, because he could have done what he's doing just now at any point over the past 8 years, but he's chosen to do it after 4 months of warning the world, I am building up my supply, my stock of my fighting machine across the border from eastern Ukraine.
Yes, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he wants a change of regime, and a regime that should be, in his view, sympathetic to Russia's interests, starting with obviously turning down the NATO and the EU membership path, claiming some kind of neutrality or Finland position. So I think this is one of his goals. But Zelensky is going to put on a fight, and obviously we should not forget, because this is the most important element of what is happening. You have more than 40 million Ukrainian people who feel Ukrainian, who don't want necessarily to be part of Russia, and therefore Putin knows very well that as an occupying power, Russia will face a growing cost of this operation. So he's trying to go for a quick operation in order to quickly impose his terms, and probably after, I guess, withdraw and consolidate his presence in more friendly territory. So this is the game we're in. But Zelensky also knows very well that, of course, there can be a people resistance, and I think this is what he's calling on. But this will be at a dramatic cost for Ukraine, population, and the Ukrainian economy. So this is a very dire situation, and it is sad to see that the West is obviously claiming to put together some significant sanctions and is coming up with important statement of unity and a resolve, but at the end the West is not going to put a single NATO soldier on Ukrainian soil, and this is what could make the only difference right now.